Everyone, welcome to our webinar, Making the Most of Your Child's IEP, the 411 on creating effective IEP goals. I'm Renee Myers. I'm the content specialist at Form Families Forward, and I'm trained as a school psychologist, and I'm a nationally certified school psychologist. And here tonight, running tech for me is Kelly Henderson. She's our executive director, and she'll be manning the chat for me and making sure that this hopefully runs smoothly. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in and she'll let me know. And we're going to go ahead and get started. One last time, if you haven't done that pre-test, we'd really appreciate it if you could do that. It helps us with our data collection. So if you're new to us, we are a family-led resource center in Northern Virginia, supporting adoptive, foster, and kinship families who are raising children and young adults with special needs, as well as the professionals who serve these families. We have free consultations, we do events, we help with systems navigation, we have a great resource directory on our website. We also offer peer support groups, both for youth and for adults. And kinship caregivers. All this stuff is free. We're a partner with the Virginia Tiered Systems of Support. So check us out, check out our website. We have a newsletter, and we'd love to have you check out our stuff. If you need a certificate of attendance for tonight, you want to contact our colleague, Natalie Johnson-Abbott. You'll see her email here on the screen. It's natalie.johnson Abbott at formfamiliesforward.org. Just send her a note and she will get you a certificate. I want to make a little plug for Learning Your Way. This is our online learning system. If you've ever done one of those, it's completely self-paced instruction, and you do earn a certificate if you need that. It's automatically generated when you finish a course. We have a number of courses that are up and running. We have a Special Education 101 course. We have one on trauma. We have one on kinship care, positive parenting. You'll see the whole list there. Each of these courses are composed of several lessons with interactive activities and quizzes to check your knowledge. You can register here at this link here, and it's free. And you'll get if you register here, you'll get an email that'll help you reset a password, and then you are good to go. We have a safe and calm workshop coming up this coming Monday. So at 2 different times, you get a meal, lunch or dinner. It's a light meal, but we'll be talking about ways to reduce stress, building routines, managing risks, and you'll get to go home with some great calming and prevention tools. And there is Spanish interpretation available. Here is a slide about our support groups. As I said, we have a kinship support group, as well as which runs virtually and in person. And then we have Form Families Together, which is another adoptive and kinship and foster support group that meets in person and virtually as well. So you can register here and we can get you hooked up with any of those. So before we get started, we always like to find out who we have in the audience today. So Kelly is going to launch a poll, just so you can tell us who you are and what brings you to our webinar tonight.
Hello, my name is Shanitra Hall, and I'm coming to the webinar tonight so I can find out more information on being supportive to my nieces that I'm taking care of right now.
That's wonderful. Welcome and thank you. Thank you for sharing.
So that poll should be launched and you should be able to just mark your roles. We know that many of you may have more than one, and that's fine. Just mark more than one as a We'll give about 10 more seconds on that poll. I know, yep, we're getting more coming in. Oh, and we have some more folks coming in the room too. So welcome to anyone who's joining us. And we'll give just about 5 more seconds. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll, and I believe I can display that. Renee, are you able to see those, or would you like me to read them off?
I can.
Okay,
So
perfect.
it looks like we've got quite a mix here, which is pretty typical. We've got 27% adoptive parents, 18% kinship caregivers, 45% are foster or resource parents, 18% birth parents, 18% professionals, and 9% others. So we've got a mix of people, and we're so excited to have you all here tonight. Thank you for taking part in our poll. We'll have
And
some more
Renee,
polls. Yes.
yeah, I just wanted to share that one parent could not access the poll, and that is a foster parent. So we have another foster parent. And
Great. Thank you. So, have you found yourself wondering about your child's IEP goals, whether they're any good? So tonight we're going to start with a quick review of the legal foundations of IEPs, and then we're going to answer some questions. We're going to talk about why meaningful goals matter, what the PLAF is and what it has to do with goal creation. What are the characteristics of high quality, meaningful goals and how we make our goals smart? And also, how do you know if your child's making progress? And if they're not, how do you make changes in their IEP? So if you're attending tonight, you probably already know what an IEP is, but we're just going to do a quick review, make sure everyone here is on the same page. So an individualized education program, or IEP, is a written plan, and it's developed for students who have been found eligible for special education. It outlines tailored educational goals and specific services that the student with a disability will receive. The primary purpose of the IEP is to ensure that each child with a disability receives a FAPE, that's a free, appropriate public education that meets their unique needs. This personalized approach is meant to generate meaningful educational progress. Remember that creating an IEP is a collaborative effort. It involves a multidisciplinary team of which you're a part. It includes educators, special education professionals, parents or guardians, and even when appropriate, the student themselves. And the team should work together to assess the student's needs and develop a comprehensive plan. The development and implementation of IEPs are mandated and guided by federal laws, primarily the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, or IDEA, as you might have heard it called. It's the cornerstone federal law that governs special education, and it ensures that children with disabilities are entitled to a free, appropriate public education that meets their unique needs. As I said, parent participation is paramount. That's the most basic of all procedural requirements of the IDEA. And it says that students' parents or caregivers must be full and equal participants with the school in the development of the IEP. Special education rulings by the courts, including the Supreme Court, have emphasized that school divisions must go beyond providing parents and families with merely an opportunity to participate. They have a critical obligation to encourage meaningful participation in the IEP process. Families offer valuable perspectives and insights into students' strengths and needs and interests that the school might not know or be aware of. And this collaboration can lead to a more tailored and effective educational plan. So you read and you hear this word parent, and you might be wondering that as a grandparent or an aunt or a foster parent, where does that leave me? So it's important to understand that the term parent under special education regulations is a wide-reaching term. The definition of parent in Virginia special ed regulations is a biological or adoptive parent of a child, a foster parent, even if the biological or adoptive parent's rights have not been terminated. The school has to provide written notice to the biological parent that the foster parent is acting as the parent, but the school is entitled to rely upon actions of the foster parent until the biological parent attempts to act as a parent. A parent can be a guardian, generally authorized to act as the child's parent or authorized to make educational decisions for the child. Parent can be an individual acting in the place of a biological or adoptive parent, including a grandparent, a step parent, or another relative. with whom the child lives, or an individual who is legally responsible for the child's welfare. And if none of the above can serve, a surrogate parent can be appointed by the school. And even an emancipated minor can serve as a parent under IDEA. Here's an outline to help you remember the essential requirements of an IEP. IEPs must include these specific components, all of which work together to support the student's education. First is the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, or PLAF. It provides a comprehensive overview of the student's abilities, their strengths, and their needs. The PLAF serves as the foundation for setting appropriate goals. All of the student's educational needs identified in the evaluation stage should be included in the PLAF section of the IEP. The next component of the IEP is measurable annual goals. These are specific targets the student aims to achieve within the year. They address both academic and functional skills. And these goals guide instruction and intervention strategies. The IEP must also detail special education services and supports that the student will receive. This includes related services like speech therapy and occupational therapy, and it specifies the frequency, duration, and location of these services. The IEP must also outline methods for measuring and reporting progress. This ensures that the team can track the student's progress toward their goals and adjust the instruction as needed. The IEP should discuss the student's participation in the general education curriculum, including any areas where they will be educated alongside their peers and any necessary supports to facilitate inclusion. The IEP includes a statement of accommodations and modifications. These are adaptations to instruction and assessments that help the student access their curriculum and demonstrate their learning effectively. And then lastly, this varies by state, but in Virginia, for students aged 14 and above, transition planning becomes a required component of the IEP. This section focuses on preparing the student for life after high school, including post-secondary education, employment, and independent living skills. Each of these components of the IEP plays a vital role in creating a comprehensive and effective IEP that's tailored to meet the student's individual needs. However, the focus of today's webinar is creating effective IEP goals. So we're going to focus in on the first two components you see here, measurable annual goals and the present levels of academic and functional performance. And then we'll touch at the end on some measuring and reporting progress. So let's start with the PLAF statement. The first requirement of an IEP is a statement of the child's present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, or the PLAF statement. Sometimes you'll hear it also referred to as the PLOP, the present levels of performance, or even the PLEP, present levels of educational performance. But whatever acronym you use, the statement is the foundation of everything else in the IEP. There needs to be a direct relationship between the present levels of performance and all the other components of the IEP. If this statement is flawed, so will the rest of the IEP be flawed. The PLAF needs to include how the child's disability affects the child's involvement and progress in the general education curriculum, or for preschool children, how the disability affects the child's participation in appropriate activities. What does IDEA say about goals? The second requirement of an IEP is a statement of annual measurable goals, including both academic and functional goals. The goals must meet the child's needs that result from the child's disability to enable the child to be involved in and make progress in the general education curriculum. And the goals must meet each of the child's other educational needs that result from the child's disability. A side note, you may be wondering about short-term objectives. In the 2004 reauthorization of IDEA, benchmarks or short-term objectives are required only for children with disabilities who take alternative assessments aligned to alternative achievement standards. So you might not see those as often anymore. The Progress Center has developed a series of tip sheets that align with the requirements of an IEP according to IDEA. And Kelly's going to drop a link in the chat for one specifically focused on measurable annual goals. It's a great resource, and it even tells you more about writing annual goals. So why do meaningful goals matter? Developing meaningful goals is critical because they serve as the roadmap for a student's educational journey. Well-crafted goals direct educators toward providing targeted and effective instruction tailored to the student's individual needs. They address educational functional needs that are outlined in that PLAF statement that we talked about being so important. Meaningful goals allow for measurable progress, and they enable the IEP team to monitor the student's development accurately and then adjust teaching strategies as necessary to ensure continued growth. Meaningful goals answer the questions. One, is the program providing meaningful education benefit? And second, what other services might be needed? From a legal standpoint, having clear and appropriate goals ensures compliance with IDEA requirements, protecting the rights of the student, and maintaining the school's accountability. When goals are relevant and attainable, they can significantly boost a student's motivation and engagement by providing clear objectives and a sense of achievement as progress is made. And ultimately, meaningful IEP goals contribute to positive long-term outcomes by equipping students with the necessary skills and knowledge to succeed academically and behaviorally. Aligning IEP goals with the student's present levels of academic achievement and functional performance is essential for creating relevant and effective objectives. An accurate and comprehensive description of the student's current abilities provides a clear starting point for goal setting. It highlights strengths and identifies specific areas of need. It also serves as the baseline from which progress can be measured. By understanding the student's current performance, the IEP team can develop goals that address gaps and are tailored to the student's needs. For example, if a student's PLAF indicates difficulty in reading comprehension at a third grade level, an appropriate goal might be that by the end of the school year, the student will improve reading comprehension skills to a fourth grade level by accurately summarizing main ideas and supporting details in grade level texts with 80% accuracy across 3 consecutive assessments. Such alignment between present levels and goals ensures that instruction is targeted effectively and promotes consistent and meaningful progress for the student. It also ensures continuity in learning. Goals are designed to facilitate logical and achievable progression from the student's present level or baseline toward higher levels of performance and ultimately the goal. A high-quality PLAF statement will contain all of the components you see on this screen: student needs, effects on progress, baseline information, and connection to goals. We're going to go through each of these on the next slides. Student needs. The PLAF should include information on the student's current academic and functional needs. This includes the main area of concern, the parents' concerns. Family input helps ensure that the goals are meaningful and motivating for the student. The PLAF needs to include results from the evaluation, include the student's strengths, and the student's instructional preferences. The PLAF should also include a statement on the impact of the disability on involvement in general education. How does the student's disability impact their involvement in, access to, and progress in the general education curriculum? Baseline information will help document the student's current level of performance. It needs to be based on current information. If an IEP team is using old information from a year or older on which the PLAF statement is, to base the PLAF statement, the team needs to obtain additional assessments that are current to the area of need. PLAF statements need to be specific. If they're vague, they will not provide enough information to develop the IEP. The PLAF should include results of the student's performance on a variety of assessments: state, district, individually administered measures, and teacher observations. And the PLAF should provide a quantitative baseline about current functioning and a discussion of assessment results in relation to the student's peers. Quantifiable means that it's able to be expressed as an amount, a quantity, or a numerical value. And finally, the PLAF needs to provide enough details so the team can develop ambitious annual goals and determine what special education, related services, accommodations, and program modifications are needed. Every need that is identified in the PLAF must then be addressed by a goal, a service, or both a goal and a service. Here are some questions that you can ask yourself as you read over the PLAF statement on your student's IEP. Does it provide a snapshot of the student, including the strengths and areas of need? Is family input present and clearly considered? Are statements supported by data? And are multiple sources of data used? Is the data understandable to the family, the student, the teacher? That is, does it use clear, understandable language, and is it free from jargon? Are PLAF summary statements present for each skill area included? Could you write observable and measurable individualized goals based on the PLAF? And if you removed the student's name, could someone who knows the student well identify the student based on reading this PLAF statement? How does this PLAF statement stand up to the test? Let's take a look at this example. Sorry. Let's take a look at this example and see how we think it stands up. Rodney is a 12-year-old 7th grade student who was diagnosed with a learning disability in math in 5th grade. At that time, he was earning D's and F's in math class and received a score of fail below basic on the end of year SOL math assessment. He continues to have problems in his math and science classes. Jeremy is a strong reader and is performing well in his English and history classes. Kelly's going to launch a poll so that we can rate this PLAF statement. You're going to go through each of the questions and check off which ones you believe are covered in this PLAF statement.
Hang on just one second. Having a little technical. Hold on. All righty, now we're in business.
So check each of the ones that you think apply. And then we'll go through and talk about them. All right, Kelly, you want to see what results we got? See what
Yes,
people think
ma'am.
of this PLAF statement? Okay. So, question 1 provides a snapshot of Rodney's strengths and areas of need. So 92% of people liked this. We can see here that it does say that it mentions some strengths, that he's a good reader. And it also My concern would be that his needs is really what this says is that he was diagnosed with a learning disability, and a disability label in and of itself is not a need. And so we don't really know a lot about what his needs are as far as math goes. So family input. I think everyone agrees there's no family input here, and that's definitely a problem when it comes to the PLAF statement. Is supported by data. About 23% of people felt it was supported by data, and there is some data here. We've got some SOL scores, but I don't know if people recognize that those scores were from 2 years earlier, so that is problematic. And also, we're not seeing multiple sources. We want to look for, I guess actually it did say that he got D's and F's in math, but that's also from 2 years ago. So we've got outdated data, and we probably would like to see some more sources. Contains data that's understandable to the family, the teacher, 54%. So, as far as I don't see a lot of language here that would be difficult to understand, but it's just really lacking in family input and just overall details. Could be used to write an observable and measurable goal. I think we're going to struggle without having some current data and some actual scores. If we're going to really struggle to know what goal to write here. And as far as identifying this kid, I'm not sure that that a teacher or anybody else could identify this kid based on this description. So thank you all so much for participating. So the PLAF statement, like we talked about, provides the basis on on which the rest of the IEP is developed, and it should describe the needs of the student and establish a baseline which the team can then use to monitor performance and measure progress. When the PLAF statements are inaccurate or incomplete, it's unlikely that the rest of the IEP will be valid. So take a look at your child's PLAF statement and pay special attention to these things. Are strengths and needs clearly defined? And remember that a disability label in and of itself is not a need. Does it use outdated evaluation results? If the data is more than a year old, it's too old. Are the results explained? Do you understand what the numbers mean? Look for vague or overly general language. Are all areas of the PLAF statement addressed by a goal, a service, or both? And finally, is your family input included? Insist on a better PLAF statement in your child's IEP. And if these things aren't included, then you have the right as a member of that IEP team to insist on adding to that PLAF statement, because as we said, this is really the basis for building the rest of the IEP. Now that we know that we need to create a high quality PLAF statement, we can move on to creating high quality goals. This starts with asking the right questions. What do we want for the student? What is the current reality of the student's circumstances? What does the student need to be successful? And how do we support the student's family and educators to assist that student? How do we recognize high quality, meaningful IEP goals? First, we need to keep in mind that our decisions about goals for students with disabilities can either limit or maximize student outcomes. This is really a reminder that while goals should be realistic, it's imperative that they're challenging and ambitious. The Supreme Court in Andrew F. versus Douglas County School District emphasized that schools must offer an educational program for each child with a disability that is appropriately ambitious in light of his or her circumstances. Every child should have the chance to meet challenging objectives. If your child's IEP is using goals that are recycled from the year before, you should probably be asking, is this goal ambitious? And why wasn't it met the previous year? High quality goals will have these components. The high quality goal will say who, the student. It will give a time frame, the length of time to achieve the goal. It will list the conditions under which the goal should be achieved. It will describe the behavior that we want the student to do, as well as the criterion to what level or degree we want the child to do that behavior. And high quality goals are SMART. The SMART framework is widely recognized method for creating effective IEP goals. We're going to look at each of the components of this acronym. First, the S, specific. Goals should be clearly defined and unambiguous. They need to be detailed and leave no room for confusion about what is expected. They should identify the precise skill or behavior the student will acquire or improve upon. M, measurable. Goals should be quantifiable and trackable. They must include the criteria that allow progress to be objectively measured. This involves specifying how success will be determined and what data will be collected to assess the progress. A, attainable or achievable. Goals need to be challenging, yet realistic and attainable by the student, taking into account their current abilities and their potential for growth within the given time frame. Setting attainable goals helps maintain student motivation and confidence. R, relevant. Goals need to be directly connected to the student's needs, their interests, and their educational priorities. They should support the student's overall educational and functional development. And T, time-based or time-bound. Effective goals include a clear deadline or time frame for achievement, providing a target date for when the goal should be met. This helps in planning instruction and monitoring progress systematically. Now we're going to take a look at each one of these a little closer. Specific. When orally presented with a second grade reading passage, Liliana will demonstrate comprehension by verbally. So here we see that goals should identify the precise skill or behavior the student will acquire or improve upon. The goal should include clear strategies and accommodations that will be used, such as using cards or pictures, and or the accommodations that will be used, such as a graphing calculator. This is to include special factors related to communication, assistive technology, and other supports related to the child's disability. It's important in our goals that we avoid vague language and ambiguity. So we want to avoid terms like improve or understand or learn, and replace them with exact, specific, observable actions or skills the student will perform. For example, demonstrate comprehension by verbally retelling, or summarize the main idea and key details in writing. Second, measurable. Here we see an overall 3 out of 4 score on a weekly reading comprehension rubric. We want to make sure that our goals are measurable, they can be observed, and data can be collected systematically. In Escambia County Board of Education versus Benton, the court said that a program cannot possibly confer educational benefit if teachers and parents do not know where they are trying to take a student or how they will know when he has arrived. Measurable means that the evidence is quantifiable. The goal describes the level of performance that will be needed to achieve the goal and determine if progress has been made. Time-bound, in this case by 5/31/25. Time-bound is pretty straightforward. Does the goal list the target date for when the goal should be met? Attainable and relevant. Is this goal relevant and attainable for Liliana? This is really where the PLAF information is really important. We need that background information, that statement of needs, that statement of strengths. And then we can ask, is a second grade reading passage an ambitious yet achievable goal for Liliana? Here are a couple of examples of high quality IEP goals from the Virginia Department of Education standards-based IEP technical assistance document. You can see all the components of a SMART goal at work. By June 8th, 2020, when given an equation shown on a graph and the use of a graphing calculator, Stephen will graph linear equations and inequalities with 2 variables with 85% accuracy in 3 out of 5 attempts. Here's another one. Chloe will tell fictional or personal stories sequentially with 3 or more details using appropriate sentence structure and at least 5-word utterances over 2 out of 3 opportunities across 5 data days as measured by her teacher or therapist observation and data collection by April of 2020. Let's take a minute and break down the first example. It's specific. When given an equation shown on a graph and the use of a graphing calculator, Stephen will graph linear equations and inequalities with 2 variables. It's measurable. 85% accuracy in 3 out of 5 attempts. Attainable and relevant. We don't have Stephen's PLAF statement, but let's say this is a challenging yet attainable goal for him that would be relevant in the algebra class he's taking. And the goal is time-bound. By June 8th, 2020, he is going to achieve this goal. Now take a look at this goal written for John, a 3rd grade student. Current benchmark assessment data, teacher reports, and most recent grade reports indicate that while John's fluency is in the average range compared to other students in 3rd grade, his written comprehension is below average. His IEP lists this goal. Given a 3rd grade text and graphic organizer, John will accurately summarize the main idea and key details with 90% accuracy across 3 consecutive trials per quarter. Kelly's going to launch a poll. Mark each of the criteria of a SMART goal that you think this goal meets. While you do that, think about how we could make this goal meet each one of the letters in the SMART acronym: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound.
Renee, while folks take a moment on that poll, I just want to do a time check. It is 7:41.
Great, thank you. All right, you want to show us that one?
Yep, I will close it in about 5 seconds. I know that
Okay, great.
we are getting a couple more participants, so I'm just going to give it just a smidgen more. Renee's raising the bar here tonight as people are trying to wrap up their day and shut down their brains. We are getting some more participants, so I'm just going to give it a little bit more time. All right, we'll give it 10 more seconds. Thanks for participating. All righty, here we go.
Great, thank you, everyone. I was going to ask you all to go through and specify what you saw, but like since we're running out of time here, I'll go through it quickly. So yeah, specific. I think you know, we could improve this by indicating how John would respond, whether he's going to do this verbally or in writing. It's definitely I see measurable, 90% accuracy across 3 consecutive trials. We're going to assume that it's relevant it's grade appropriate and addresses a need that he has. I do think we're missing a time bound. It doesn't say when he's going to do this by, and that would definitely need to be included to make it a SMART goal. So here we go. Here's just an example of how we could make this. We could improve on this goal by June 2025, given a 3rd grade text and a graphic organizer. John will accurately summarize the main idea and key details in writing with 90% accuracy across 3 consecutive trials per quarter. So high quality goals are individualized. If the name was removed, could you identify the student a goal was written for? It's not uncommon for schools to use sample goals from a guidance document, a goal bank, or a drop-down list. And while these goals may contain the technical components of a compliant goal, they're often not a right fit for students. They lack real context and student-specific strengths and needs. You want your kids to have goals that are connected to their present level statement and constructed to address their individual needs. High quality behavior goals are written to increase desired behavior. So when developing an IEP, functional and behavioral skills and goals must be considered for all students. The purpose of functional goals is to increase access, participation, and/or independence in the general education curriculum. If a student doesn't presently display a need for a functional goal, the IEP team should provide a statement in the PLAF explaining the current functional level of the student. Ideally, behavior goals should be written to increase the desired replacement behaviors rather than to extinguish negative behaviors. The focus of the goal statement should be positive and state what the child will do rather than what she will not do or stop doing. For example, we want to say Jonas will raise his hand and wait for the teacher to call on him rather than Jonas will refrain from hitting the teacher to get her attention. Here are two examples of high-quality behavior goals. Given a class discussion on assigning reading material, Aaron will squeeze the stress ball and wait silently for 20 seconds for others to comment before adding to discussions in 4 of 5 weekly trials by the end of 2nd grade. Given a task and a list of materials, Jim will gather 100% of the needed items to complete the task on 4 or 5 tries, evaluated by teacher checklist monthly by the end of the year. These are both written to increase desired behaviors and contain the SMART goal elements. We need to be just as methodical about behavior goals and progress monitoring as we are for academics. Behavior goals should be based on the function of the behavior. Functional behavior assessment, or FBA, should be used to gather data and analyze the antecedents, what comes before, the behaviors, and the consequences, or what comes after, as well as the overall function of the behavior. Last month, Kelly Henderson presented a webinar on functional behavior assessment, and I'm not going to go into detail here, but it's a great webinar to check out. You can check out the webinar and/or the slides, and she's going to drop in the chat the link to our website where you can find that and learn more about functional behavior assessment if you're looking at behavioral goals on your child's IEP. So where does progress monitoring fit in? I said we would touch on it in the end, and we're going to touch on it really quickly. So progress monitoring is a systematic process of collecting and analyzing data to determine a student's advancement toward their goals. The key here is it's not a one-time thing, but rather it's repeated measures. The primary purpose being to evaluate the effectiveness of the instruction and see that the progress is being made by the student. It should inform instructional decisions. If the student's not making expected progress, the IEP team can adjust teaching strategies, interventions, or supports to better meet the student's needs. We're going to skip through this one. So what makes a good progress monitoring tool? So some key things, and when you're looking at when you're looking at the tool that's going to be used to monitor progress, we want to use something that's brief and easy to administer. You know, teachers are very busy in their classroom, and we want something that they're able to use and use consistently. And if it's not time efficient, it won't be done. We need something that's able to be used repeatedly across time, because as I said, progress monitoring is not a one-time thing. It's something that needs to be done over and over again to see the little bits of change. And along that lines, the tool needs to be sensitive to changes in student performance and capture the small changes so that when a student learns a new skill, the score on the measure should reflect that change. And we need measures that are valid, reliable to be used. Using visual aids like graphs and charts helps to present data clearly and intuitively. It's easier and faster to grasp progress and make quick comparisons and determine student responsiveness when you can visualize a trend rather than looking at a bunch of numbers on a page. Unless a graph is used, it's almost impossible to clearly see changes in the trends of student performance. Kelly's going to launch another poll now. I'm just wondering how many of you have ever seen a graph of your students' goal progress?
Results are coming in, and that's fairly telling. Renee, I'm not going to even have you guess which one's going to be the predominant response there. We'll give it just about 10 more seconds. Thanks for everyone participating. All right, here we go.
Oh, this makes me sad. So 90% of you say you've never seen a graph of your child's progress. Oh. Well, this is something you can do yourself. And it is very, very telling. As I said, there's nothing like seeing a graph that of the data points that really illustrates progress. Um, so here is how you can create a graph. So what you're looking at here is an example of a graph showing student progress. The horizontal or x-axis, that's along the bottom, that shows the number of weeks of instruction. And then the vertical or y-axis, that's on the left going up and down, typically shows the score or the value for the progress monitoring assessment. Here it's labeled problems correct. It could be the numbers of words read correctly. It could be the number of math problems answered correctly, or any other kind of measure of behavior or anything else. Okay. The baseline is the starting scores. So those are circled in red. So there's 3 starting scores of where that were taken before we started the intervention or before the goal was started. Those are the scores that would be the baseline. That would be what's in the PLAF statement. And then the goal line is shown in green, and that connects the baseline with the goal. The goal line is really important because that's how you're able to assess whether the rate of progress is adequate. It represents the rate of progress required for a student to reach the selected goal at the set time period. Each blue dot you see here represents the student's score on a progress monitoring probe. The trend line is the blue line through the scores, and it gives a visual representation of the student's actual progress or lack of based on the data collected. So now you can all go home and try making a graph of your students' performance. Pick something, pick the number of math problems they get right, pick the number of letters that they recognize, something that they're working on, something that you can practice graphing, and you can see how this works and how visually seeing it can really help you understand their progress. And speaking of progress, the IEP must include a statement related to how and when progress will be measured and reported. IDEA requires that parents are regularly informed of their child's progress toward IEP goals at least as often as progress is reported to parents of students without disabilities. IDEA does not limit the progress reporting or restrict the number of times a progress report can be provided. The IEP team decides how and when progress is measured, and families should provide feedback and be actively involved in discussing their child's progress. And I'm going to speed through some of these now. You're going to, okay, so here, this is important. So tips for formed families and everyone. Tips for everyone when it comes to your child's IEP. So first, you want to always request draft goals so that you can review them carefully. You might want to get input from outside providers who work with your student, your child, or others who know and work with your kid, maybe a grandparent or a family friend. Virginia law states that if the local educational agency elects to use a draft version of the IEP, a copy shall be provided to the parent at least 2 business days in advance of the IEP meeting. So if you don't get those draft goals, ask. Secondly, make sure your voice is included in the PLAF statement. Share your perspective on your child's strengths, their interests, and their needs, and consider whether you should be including a trauma impact statement in the PLAF. Remember that goals should be ambitious. As we talked about earlier in the presentation, goals should not be carried over from one year to the next. If goals haven't been met, the team should address why. We don't want to limit our kids by setting unambitious goals. They should be attainable, but they should also be challenging. Last, IEPs are live documents. Remember that you don't need to wait until the next annual review if things aren't going well. You have the right to ask for an IEP meeting at any time to discuss changes to goals, services, or both. Speak up if you feel that there's an issue. And we're going to end with some cautions from that the Progress Center gives us for considering IEP goals. So ask yourself, are the goals in your child's IEP linked to the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance statements, including academic and functional areas if needed? And if there's a need listed, make sure that it's addressed in a goal, a service, or both. Again, make sure the goals are ambitious and challenging, but reasonable. Remember the court ruling in Andrew F. that the IEP must be calculated to enable a child to make progress appropriate in light of his or her circumstances, so he or she may be involved in and progress in the general education curriculum. Make sure that the goals in your child's IEP follow the SMART acronym. Are they specific and clear? Are they measurable, attainable, relevant, and have a timeline? A good rule of thumb that is, if you can't graph a goal, it's not measurable. A goal of increasing reading comprehension or improving decoding skills is not a measurable goal. Does the IEP contain enough information on how and when the student's progress will be measured? As was said early, there really needs to be quantitative data that we can actually use to show progress. And finally, the IEP needs to be based on data. It should define a starting point and an ending point, a baseline, the PLAFT, and a goal. And Kelly's going to drop the Progress Center's IEP tip sheets on measuring progress into the chat. And that's another great reference tool for you to use. Remember that creating effective IEPs is an ongoing process, which should involve continually evaluating the data. This is how you can find us. Here's our website, our Facebook, our Instagram, our Twitter X. Please complete the evaluation and post-test after this. And I know we are running close to time. I am happy to stay if anyone has any questions or comments. Kind of sped through the end there. Yeah.
Thank you, Renee. We do have a couple questions. So I don't want to discourage people from completing the evaluation, but try to do both. But let me pose some questions. I'm chatting a bunch of reminders in, including that fact sheet that Renee mentioned from the Progress Center on monitoring. I think it may partially address one of our questions, which was about the lack of a graph. It looks like that was a predominant. So I think the question was, where would a family find the student data specifically to address the IEP goals? In this case, a parent noted that their daughter is 8 and has had an IEP for 2.5 years, and they've never seen or been given that information. So I know could be a very long answer, but briefly, Renee, do you have a thought?
Yeah, well, for one, you're supposed to be getting progress reports. And you certainly could ask for more additional progress reports. As we said, the idea outlines like the minimum, but if it's a skill that needs more frequent progress reports, that is certainly something that you can request and that you can ask for. And that hopefully the school will, follow through on. There are a lot of behaviors that, that you would like to see more frequently than at interims and at report cards.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question was about the trauma impact statement that we suggested was in the PLOP or the PLAF. The question was, can we share an example? We do have some examples in previous webinars. Renee, I'll let you say anything additional that you might?
Yeah, I don't have a quick answer for that. We have numerous webinars and fact sheets on trauma informed stuff. And if you look on our website under resources, we have a resource directory and a resource tab that has a lot of great trauma informed resources where you can see examples of that kind of stuff.
But I think to the point, whether it's trauma or anything else, you as a parents or caregivers have this is your opportunity on the PLAT page to really share information that is critical, in your opinion, to the child's development and to their performance in school. And so, you know them best, and you have that opportunity on that page to report that, share that. And again, if they disagree, if there's a team disagreement about what you're putting in there, the statement can still make a clarification. The parent or caregiver reports that XYZ, and that statement should be admitted into that path. But then you have a sort of a firm, hard record of you sharing that information. And God forbid there's ever questions about discipline or questions about manifestation of disability, then that statement is going to perhaps be an important one to reflect back on. Got a compliment that this was very informative. So let me just make sure I'm not missing any other. Yes, I got a thank you. And again, thank you, Renee, for an excellent presentation. Very hard to get all this good information within an hour. This will be recorded. This is being recorded, and the replay of that will be on that website that I provided, the webpage. I'll provide it again along with the slides, and you will be sent this information again by Natalie tomorrow. So don't worry if you didn't take it down. But again, I'm just going to slip it in. Renee, anything else that you would like to add before we conclude?
Nope. If feel free to contact one of us if you have any questions or take a look at your PLAF statement or your goals and you think like, is this well written? And if you want to run it by us, we're here. Please complete the post-test of the evaluation.
Please do that. Please do that. That helps us know if this is valuable and certainly helps us continue our quest to offer these free of charge through a funding of our supporters. So one more last post-test link, just going to throw that in. And if you are in our area, we would love to see you Monday for our Safe and Calm workshop in Alexandria. It's going to be great. You're going to take home a ton of really good things to help your kids regulate over the holidays and into the new year. We're really excited about that presentation. We serve lunch or we serve dinner, depending which one you join us for. And we do have, as Renee mentioned, Spanish interpretation. So we're real excited about that. We're just sliding as much into this calendar year as we can. So, all right. Thank you all.
Yes,
Renee, any last? Okay. Good night, everyone.